In this lesson, we're going to set up our player character. Alright, so now we're at the point where we want to start adding our player character to get him moving around and getting started with our game. So let's go to our meshes folder, and we're going to go to characters, and you'll see the player game object. You'll want to make sure that you rename that to player just to make things less confusing whenever you are working with this. I'm going to left click and drag this into my scene. Okay. And with this in the scene, you can go ahead and rotate it around. So if you hold down Control with the rotation tool activated and you rotate this in a certain direction, you'll notice that it starts snapping. Okay, and that's 90 degrees there. Now with that in the scene, there are a couple of things that we want to do. We will need to make sure that we have the proper setup for the file. So select your player game object in the project browser. Go to your model options, make sure that everything is set up here properly. Usually the default does pretty good. So I'm going to leave everything just the way it is there. We're going to go to our rig, and here in the rig we need to make sure that our animation type is set to generic. We could use humanoid if we wanted to because this is a humanoid type character, but I'm going to go ahead and just use the generic. We have our avatar definition. We want to create it from this model, and what that means is it's going to grab the skeleton or the rig that is inside of our character, and it's going to use that as reference. And then we're going to have the root node, and we're going to set that to robot_01_part00. Okay, that is going to be at the between his feet. Now once you have that set, you'll want to hit apply and then go to animations. Now you'll notice that the rig itself, the T-pose that I have here, there are no animations on it. So I went ahead and I turned that off just to reduce any confusion. So now if we go ahead and take a look at our next files, you can see that we have our hero idle, and we've got this kind of broken down little robot. So he's got a neat little idle that goes along with it. So we'll go to our model, make sure that everything is set up there as well. We really don't have to worry about the model too much for this particular file because we only want the animation clip that's on it. Now sometimes, like with the player character, sometimes you may have all of the animations in a single FBX file, and that's totally fine. So you would actually have to split up the animations, and I'll show you how that works here in just a moment. So with this file, let's go to the rig, and we want to make sure that our animation type is set to generic, so it matches the rig. And then we have the avatar definition, which is going to be copied from another avatar. So the avatar that we created with the T-pose rig is what we want. And so you would go to your source and choose player avatar. It will always be the name of the object, and then it will add avatar to the end of that. And so that's what we have here. Then you'll go to your animations, and if your file has animations on it, you can rename that animation clip right here, and it will reflect right here. Now if you have multiple animations on a single file, you can actually add another clip. And so you would select that clip, give it a name, and you would say something like maybe run. And then you would need to determine the start frame on that. So something, just as an example, would be 61 through 90. Okay, and then once you hit enter, it will go ahead and add that clip to it. Okay, now for this we did not add multiple animation clips to a single file. We have multiple files with a single animation clip on them, just to make things a little more visual on how that works. So with this one, let's go ahead and remove that run animation clip. So I'm going to remove that, and then everything else should be just fine. We need to make sure that we have loop time turned on for our idle, because it is going to loop over and over again. And then we'll just simply hit apply, and then it will adjust itself. And then we'll do the same thing for the next one. We need to make sure that we go to rig. It's using the player avatar. The animation is named run, and then we're going to make sure that loop time is turned off for this one, because whenever the player is going to run, that's going to be based on the input. So whenever our player pushes the controller stick forward, he's going to run. All right, so then we have that, and you'll hit apply if you've made any changes, and then the same thing for the robot walk. If you want to use the walk animation, we're probably just going to use just the run to get him moving forward. Okay. Alright, so now that that is all set, now if we go back to our game object here, you will see that we have an animator component. The animator component is automatically added to your game object if it recognizes that there is a rig and an avatar applied to it. And so with this character, we need to apply an animation controller. Now we haven't created an animation controller just yet, so let's do that now. Let's go to our assets folder. We're going to right click and create a new folder, and we're going to call this animations. Then I'm going to go back to my meshes folder with my characters, and I'm going to take those 3 files that have the animation clips on them, and I'm going to left click and drag those into that folder just to make sure things stay clean. And then inside of the animation folder, I'm going to right click and create an animator controller. Okay. Now with that created, we're going to call this player AC for animator controller. So now that that has been created, what do we do with it? Well, if we select our player game object, we can click on this button here and choose that player AC, or you can left click and drag it from the project browser to the proper slot in the animator component. So now that that has been added, what do we do with it at this point? Well, let's go ahead and double click on the animator controller, and you'll see that it brings up the animator window. Now in the animator window, this is going to hold all of our states of our animations for this particular player. So we need to start adding in animation clips to create animation states. So let's go ahead and go to our hero idle, and we are going to left click and drag the idle clip into the animator. Now the idle clip, you'll notice it has done a couple of things for us automatically. It has created a transition from the entry, so whenever the game starts, it's going to transition into this idle animation. Now the idle animation state is orange, and that denotes that this is the default state that will play whenever the game starts. So that's working perfectly as it should. So let's check this out inside of the game. Let's go to our scene view really quickly, and let's select our main camera. And then with a view something like this, or yeah, let's just kind of put this overhead like so. Let me go to the proper angle here, something like that. And then what we'll do is we will go ahead and go to game object, and we will say align with view, and you'll see that the camera preview snaps to right here. Now with that snapped to there, what we can do is hit play, and it'll go to our game view, and you can see that the animation is being played. Now while this is playing, you can switch over to your scene view, and you can navigate as normal, and it's going ahead and it's playing those animations, okay, or that idle animation there. And so you can see that our collector robot is animating. Perfect. Now you'll also notice that I have some wind showing up here too on the grass. That's from our wind features. Okay. All right, let's hit play, and that will bring us back to the T-pose for our player. And now what we want to do is we want to start adding those other clips to our animator controller. So let's go to the animator window. Let's collapse the idle. Let's go to our run. We'll take that clip and we'll put it right up in here. And then we'll do the same thing for our walk. Now we're not going to use the walk, but I'm going to place it in here in case you want to use that instead of a run. And so now, if you want to see these animations playing inside of the preview, you can actually right click on one of these states and say set as layer default state. So now we're on the run, and if I hit play, you'll notice that he runs for a moment and then stops. The reason for that is because that animation is not looping, and so it's going to stop at the end of that animation. So that's working as it should. You could do the same thing with the walk. But for now, let's go ahead and right click, and let's set this as the layer default, and then we'll talk about how to set up the different transitions to go from an idle to a run, and we'll talk about that next.